My name is Alex Landis, Senior Finance Manager at Snowflake. Been a FinOps Foundation member since the beginning. So that's my, claim to fame, right? I spoke at the founding meeting, and here we are speaking again. I feel very fortunate that we joined as enterprise members of the foundation very recently. We have really good representation here this year. I think there are 10 of us, representing kind of these two distinct paths within Snowflake. My side, which is sort of the pure practitioner side, how does Snowflake operate internally? How do we consume cloud service providers? How do we optimize? How do we meet our corporate goals? Samar Arora, Michael Steed, who are here from our value engineering side and really our customer facing. Within Snowflake, since we have these two distinct verticals, I think we need to continue thinking of ourselves as customers and thinking of everyone the same way that we think about Snowflake customers. The same goes for any of the other platform providers, right? How do you put yourself in a customer's shoes? How do you think about optimizing for yourself and learning those lessons and then also trying to pass it on to your customers and vice versa, right? To this point, things have been a little bit divorced where when you're working with internal teams, it's a little bit more like how are you going across the different services that you provide internally and trying to optimize those. Whereas when you're looking externally, it's a lot of like enterprise level engagements. I'd like to see those kind of come together a little bit more than they have in the past. And that's kind of the direction that I'm trying to push things. So I think when I think about Cloud Plus, I really think about how do you have a holistic view of your enterprise and what it means to be healthy. And then what it means to, again, like we were talking about, provide that value through to your end customers, because that kind of is the overall goal, right? Optimizing for value at Snowflake is really about how do we think about our expense as a platform sitting on top of the different cloud service providers, and then the value that we're providing to our customers as the data layer in the middle. We've already crossed the threshold of really heavily utilizing unit economics in all of the cost and optimization analysis that we do. So we think about our business purely in terms of what is the value for each credit that our customers pay us, and then what is the value for each credit that we have as an expense for any of the cloud service providers that underpin our platform. So we can really just think about, the margin between those two. That's value, right? But what we want to do ultimately is be able to squeeze that as much as we can to pass through as much of that value to our customers as we possibly can. At Snowflake, the way that we're doing this, the way we're optimizing all of our value for our customers, we have a main efficiency initiative called Tiny House. Concept here is when you think about living in a tiny house, right? What is the largest space that you need in order to live your life? We think about efficiency the same way. What are the largest types of resources that you need? How do you run your company, your enterprise, like an optimized living space, right? And so this is a cross-functional initiative that has, the highest level of sponsorship from our C-suite and has, very senior folks, distinguished engineers, very senior finance folks, PMs, TPMs, et cetera, really helping to drive all of this forward. It touches all parts of our business, our internal cloud spend as well as our COGS spend. So visibility, super important into these savings initiatives, right? So through that Tiny House program that I was mentioning, we do regular readouts with our main stakeholders. It's high visibility with lots of different folks across the board. We also think really hard about, and one of my team members just coined this term recently, the canonical dashboards and canonical reports that we have internally. How do we make sure that folks have the same view of the world across the board? Because without that sort of baseline understanding of which way is up, is the sky blue, it's hard to agree on what the right approach is to doing these large initiatives that we're talking about. So we have very structured reports, readouts, executive reviews, et cetera, that we do on a very regular basis. We wouldn't be able to do this without support from all of our TPMs and PMs, who are the people who carry the bulk of all of these types of reports for us. And it just, again, really helps to make sure that everybody is very much on the same page about how we're executing on different initiatives, different OKRs, et cetera. And it's really the only way that we keep pushing things forward. The way that we empower all of our folks at Snowflake is by running all of our optimization and reporting work on the Snowflake platform. We feel very strongly about dogfooding our own tools. And so we do everything in-house, for better or worse. We ingest all the data directly from our CSPs, and then we do all of our reporting and build these canonical dashboards that I was talking about directly on the Snowflake platform. That way we can marry it with all of our business logic. We can make sure that we're actually commenting on the business rather than commenting on, a specific resource in a specific cloud, because that's important, but it's not as important as to whether or not specific portions of your business are healthy or not. And so we really think about making sure that we're always contextualizing everything in terms of Snowflake's business. And then, in addition to that, we also need to be able to speak the language of the CSPs and understand whether or not we're consuming those resources effectively. So I have kind of an unpopular saying, and I'll throw it out there because why not? But I think one of the main blockers that we run into and that I've run into in various places is having too much data. And what I mean by that is you need to have very high fidelity views of what you're doing. You'll never get an argument from me there. But I think when there are too many different ways of looking at the world, it can get distracting. And so I like to make sure that everyone is very focused on a few very core KPIs, that we have high confidence in them, and that we're not trying to kind of reinvent the wheel as opposed to just execute. And so, especially at a very large enterprise, I think if you have too many different views of what the things are that are important, that's where you can get teams that are doing their own thing. So this is why these canonical dashboards that I was talking about are so important, right? Because you can say here's the goal. Here's the way you measure it. If you want to dig into the data, here's how you can go do it. And as long as you're providing that to everyone with that level of visibility, then you have confidence there. And then if someone's trying to solve for something else, that might be good and fine, but it's not solving the main problem that you said is the important problem statement for the company. I think earlier in my career, I would have liked to have known more and been more sort of certain about sort of the way that an enterprise breathes. And by that, I mean, I think some of these small optimization opportunities are interesting, but they're not always important to sort of getting to the goal that your company's trying to get to. And I think if I'm sort of thinking about someone who's sort of early in their FinOps career, is thinking about sort of what direction they want to go, how they want to think about being active in the community and, really contributing to value at their company, I'd say don't get distracted by things that are sort of very small. Think about steering the ship. Think about getting towards some of these, primary KPIs and how you get there. Because, at our scale, you can find some things that are very, very large in terms of opportunities, which you should do, but you always have to make sort of a value versus time trade-off. We're super far down into being able to investigate things, right? I think there's certain stages where you sort of just don't even know what's going on. We're at the stage where we can get down to that hyper granular level and go and reach out and touch one engineer and say, hey, we noticed this one specific warehouse was turned on in Snowflake that impacted our costs this way. Can you take a look at it? But that doesn't mean that we're always hitting the goals as an enterprise. It just means there are new goals. So it just means that, after you've gotten to this level of granularity and fidelity, you just have to push on to the next thing.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.